From the Oklahoma newsroom, this is an OU update. I'm Jenny Carlson here with OU beat writer Brooke Pryor. Brooke, the spring is rolling along towards the spring game on April 14th, but news that the Sooners had a scrimmage behind closed doors. It was last Saturday, about 2 weeks before the spring game. I suppose the big news is always going to be quarterbacks, but did we find out anything? Did they find out anything about their quarterbacks in that scrimmage?
You know, if they did, they were not willing to tell us. The general consensus is that there was no real separation. No guy really distinguished himself from another, and those two guys being Kyler Murray and Austin Kendall. You know, I think that the buzz around Norman, the buzz nationally, is that Kyler Murray is the guy. We've written a little bit about Kyler Murray. We've written a little bit about Austin Kendall. But, you know, if there's been any, you know, one taking the lead over the other after that first scrimmage, they're not saying that. There's really, you know, I think that's going to be something that's played really close to the vest until the fall, although I think the spring game that everyone can see, that scrimmage, like you said, on April 14th, I think maybe then we'll see some separation, see if the coaches are right, that they're, you know, it has been neck and neck, or that one is clearly better than the other.
Do you think part of this has to do with the fact that Kyler Murray's playing baseball this spring? And, I mean, you need all your quarterbacks engaged, but clearly if your guy is off playing another sport, isn't at practice all the time, it'd be hard to say, you know, this is our starter and the other quarterbacks are sort of left. Is that part of the equation in this whole thing? You
know, it could be. I think a part of it, too, is that Lincoln Riley wants to preserve depth and doesn't want to, you know, cause a transfer situation to happen. Because if you look, you know, Austin Kendall could end up being the odd man out here when you have Tanner Mordecai coming in this summer. Kyler Murray gets the starting job, and if they give it to him too early, or if he wins it too early, you know, then Austin Kendall is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I think that they want this competition to be as close as possible. And Austin Kendall's a talented quarterback. He won a state championship. He did great things for his high school back in North Carolina. He, you know, is a guy that fits in the system that Lincoln Riley used to use at East Carolina, more of a pro-style quarterback than that dual threat and that athleticism that Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield bring. So, you know, he's a talented guy, but I don't know that he's the right fit for what Lincoln Riley's been doing recently.
All right, let's talk about other things that came out of the scrimmage. We found out that a few guys didn't participate, maybe prime among them being Chance Sylvie, had an ankle injury, it sounds like.
Yeah, had an ankle sprain that happened last week. He didn't participate. Robert Barnes had a hamstring issue. He didn't participate. Sounds like Jordan Parker and Alex Dalton are also no contact guys, but they've been doing some drills. But at this point in the spring, the fact that there hasn't been any other major injuries, you know, Nick Basquin's a guy that was hurt before spring practice really started, hurt his other Achilles, but he sounds like he'll be back for the fall. So the fact that the Sooners have gotten a couple practices in and haven't had any catastrophic injuries is an encouraging sign.
What do you think in the next couple weeks? What's the prime needs that the Sooners need to accomplish with practices, as they, you know, they're limited now. They're getting down to the end of spring ball. What do they need to accomplish these last few weeks?
You know, I think the biggest thing is shoring up the secondary. That was an area, obviously, that had a lot of negative attention throughout the year, the secondary and the linebackers. And I think that OU, their cornerbacks, they're probably pretty solid there, with Parnell Motley and Trey Norwood likely getting those starting jobs. I think the safety situation is one that they're really going to have to evaluate closely with the graduation of Will Johnson and Stephen Parker. There's some spots up for grabs there. And the linebacker situation, you know, you've got Kenneth Murray returning to middle linebacker, but you've also got Caleb Kelly moving inside. He's not practicing, coming off a shoulder surgery, but, you know, he needs to get acclimated to that role, at least watching what's happening in practice, and then getting some of those younger guys worked in. Ryan Jones, a guy that moved from wide receiver to DB, now to linebacker. So just getting these young guys as much work as possible, focusing on defense, I think, are two of the major things that OU wants to get out of the last couple of spring practices.
All right, lots left to happen. We'll be covering it all and obviously getting geared up towards that spring game on the 14th. Lots happening on that day down in Norman. So be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.